Today, we're diving deep into one of the most powerful, mysterious, and thought-provoking stories in the Bible. The story of Job. Let's start with Job himself. Imagine a man who has it all. A wealthy, righteous man living in the land of Uz. He's described as blameless and upright, meaning that Job is living a life that is both morally good and pleasing to God. He's wealthy, has a big family, and is known as someone who helps others. Job is the kind of guy who's been blessed with everything: great health, a large family, abundant flocks and herds, and a reputation for being a good, kind man. Everything in his life is perfect, and it seems like nothing could go wrong for him. But here's the thing. This is where the story gets interesting. His perfection and prosperity aren't the reason why we're about to dive into this biblical drama. In fact, Job's story takes an unexpected turn, one that challenges some of the deepest questions about faith, suffering, and justice. Now, things take a wild turn. Picture a grand heavenly courtroom. This is where we meet Satan. In Job, Satan isn't portrayed as the ultimate evil villain, but more as an accuser, someone who tests the righteousness of humans. The scene starts with a meeting of divine beings, and Satan steps forward and challenges God. He suggests that Job's faithfulness is only because Job has never faced any hardship. Satan says, "Of course Job loves you. Look at all the blessings he has." Essentially, Satan claims that Job is faithful because everything is going right in his life. But here's where God takes the challenge. God allows Satan to test Job, but with a critical condition. Satan can take everything from Job, but he cannot harm Job's life directly. This sets the stage for Job's profound suffering, and for us to ask, why does suffering exist, especially for good people? The story starts unfolding quickly. In the blink of an eye, Job loses everything he has. First, a series of messengers arrive one after the other, each delivering devastating news. His oxen and donkeys are stolen by raiders. His sheep are burned up by fire. His camels are taken, and worst of all, a mighty wind destroys the house where his children were, killing them all. It's almost as if fate has conspired against him, and within a short period, Job has lost all his wealth, his property, and his children. Just imagine the shock and grief Job must have felt. But here's the kicker. Job's reaction is astounding. Instead of cursing God or sinking into bitterness, Job responds with these famous words, "The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. May the name of the Lord be praised." In that moment, Job accepts that his possessions were gifts, and even if they're taken away, he still praises God. It's a powerful, profound moment of humility and faith. But this is only the beginning of Job's ordeal. Satan isn't done yet. Now Satan ramps up the challenge. He asks God for permission to strike Job's health. God agrees, and Job is suddenly covered in painful, oozing boils from head to toe. His suffering is so intense that he takes broken pottery to scrape his skin. It's almost unbearable. To make matters worse, Job's wife, deeply affected by their losses, tells him, "Curse God and die." Her grief is so overwhelming that she suggests the only way out of this pain is to give up on God altogether. But Job doesn't follow her suggestion. Instead, he says, "Shall we accept good from God and not trouble?" In other words, Job acknowledges that life is a mix of blessings and hardships, and that suffering doesn't automatically mean something is wrong. This shows a level of spiritual depth and maturity. He's not just a man of faith when things are good, but he maintains his integrity in the face of devastating loss. After Job's suffering deepens, his three friends, Eliphaz, Bildad, and Zophar, arrive to comfort him. They are initially quiet, sitting with him for 7 days without speaking, which seems like a gesture of sympathy. But soon, they begin to speak, and this is where the story gets even more complex. They start off by suggesting that Job must have done something wrong to deserve such punishment. Their message is clear. You must have sinned, Job. This is why you're suffering. Their perspective reflects the traditional view that suffering is always a punishment for sin. But Job defends himself. He insists that he hasn't done anything wrong and he begins to express his confusion and frustration. Job's dialogue with his friends becomes a long series of arguments about the nature of suffering, sin, and divine justice. Job doesn't accept the simplistic explanation that suffering is always deserved. As Job continues his search for answers, he begins to ask deep existential questions. He wonders why he is suffering despite his innocence. He cries out for an explanation, seeking a reason from God himself. Job even begins to wish he had never been born, expressing his anguish in ways that are raw and vulnerable. This is where the story takes a significant turn. For a long time, Job doesn't hear anything from God. There's silence, and this silence becomes one of the most powerful elements of the story. Job is essentially in the dark, struggling to understand his suffering. In his frustration, he doesn't hold back from questioning God's justice. But the silence isn't permanent. Eventually, God answers Job, but not in the way Job expected. God finally speaks, but his response is unlike anything Job anticipated. Instead of answering Job's questions directly, God asks Job a series of questions. Where were you when I laid the earth's foundation? Tell me, if you understand. Who marked off its dimension? Surely you know. God's response emphasizes the vastness of creation, the intricacy of the universe, and the limits of human understanding. Essentially, God's answer is that humans cannot fully comprehend the workings of the divine. There's a much larger plan at play, one that transcends human knowledge. God doesn't give Job the specific answers he was hoping for, but he does point to the mystery of divine wisdom. Job, in the end, humbly accepts that he cannot understand the full scope of God's purposes. After God's speech, Job acknowledges his limitations and repents for questioning God. God, in turn, rebukes Job's friends for their misguided counsel. God tells them to offer sacrifices, and Job prays for them. Finally, Job's life is restored. He is blessed with twice as much wealth as before. God also gives him 10 more children, 7 sons and 3 daughters, who are described as the most beautiful in the land. Job's restoration reflects the deeper truth that though suffering is inevitable, it does not have the final say. God's grace and restoration can bring new beginnings, greater blessings, and a sense of fulfillment even after profound loss. If you've found this video helpful or thought-provoking, make sure to give it a like and share it with someone who might appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe for more insights into timeless stories and lessons from the Bible. God bless.